welcome to episode 1.
Very excited.
Very excited. In today's episode, we are discussing what is animation for business anyway? How can marketers and creatives get on the same page about what they're selling?
And more importantly, perhaps,
maybe,
do we have too many acronyms in the marketing world?
Stick around and find out. Hey there, welcome back. My name is Will.
And I'm Kathryn.
And this is Behind the Pixel, an Open Pixel podcast, the podcast where we try to bridge the gap between the people who buy creative content and the people who make it. Where do you listen to your podcasts?
So I listen to them specifically in 2 locations. The first, like probably many, is in the car while I'm driving around.
Yeah, actually, that's happening more often.
When I used to commute 2 hours each way for a job. That's a story we can get into later.
Yeah, it's a long time.
But the second, probably more transparent place I listen to podcasts is absolutely in the shower. It's the place where you're the most creative, right? There's a whole reason why they have shower thoughts.
Well, no matter where you decide to listen to your podcast.
Like the shower.
Thanks for being here. So a bit of business before we move forward. If you have a question, we've devised a way for you to communicate with us that isn't necessarily just an email.
Really?
Or a letter. You know, some people used to write letters.
Oh, I would happily accept a handwritten letter.
Oh, we get handwritten letters all the time.
We do. It's actually
quite
is very lovely.
Nice. Yeah,
we have them up on different office shelves and things.
Yeah, we do put them up. So just so you know, the folks who do send us letters are wonderful people. So thank you. But one thing we wanted to say was pod questions or pod question.
PodQuest?
PodQuest. We couldn't figure out a good term for this. Anyway, it's openpixelstudios.com/podquestion.
Okay.
You could submit your question or topic or concern or whatever it is you want to say. Submit it there. It's a really simple way. It goes right into our database. The reason we ask for email, we're not going to sign you up for any subscription services. We're not going to put you on any newsletters. We're not going to do any of that. The reason we ask for an email, honestly, is because of the bots. So if we open it up to everyone, then the bots will get in there. And so you need an email address. So put in your email.
Siri's got a lot of questions, you know.
Siri?
Yeah, Siri. Or Alexa.
Anyway, submit your question there or visit our podcast page on our website, openpixelstudios.com/behindthepixel or openpixelstudios.com/BTP. Either one of those will take you to the podcast website, and there's a ask a question right there. There's a button.
Yeah.
Shoot us your questions.
And we'll try to get to them. Yeah. We'll either get to them through different episodes, through specific topics, or we'll, address them at the end of each episode. But
and for the folks who sign up and submit a question, just so you know, the only email we will send you is a invite to the AMA, the Ask Me Anything sort of podcast version of that.
Yeah.
So we'll have people live on, we'll answer some questions, and it'll be a fun time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, with that, let's jump in.
Today's topic is how to utilize the medium of animation for your business efforts and where we see businesses use it. Just a little bit of housekeeping notes right before.
Yep.
We form a problem, and we come up with a topic or problem. We explain it through 2 points of views, the marketing and the creative. So take it away, Kathryn, on what the problem is.
Sure. So there's 2 problems here, right? On the marketer side, there's a problem with having an understanding of what strategic options they have when they're trying to utilize the medium of animation, which can make it really hard to actually shop around for animation, especially if you're going to freelancers or studios to be like, which style do I go with? What do I call this? What is this product type? I'm not really sure.
On the creative side, we have a problem around naming our products. So we don't have a consensus around what to call the things we're making and what we're selling to other people who are buying it. Across the board, there's a ton of creatives that are talking about different ways in which they're selling particular things that they're doing and not really thinking about it as a whole.
Yeah, and I think we should acknowledge that Open Pixel, us, have been a part of that problem.
We're totally part of the problem.
We absolutely,
that's true.
when we got started, we were a hot mess. And
We're
trying to
always
figure
a hot
out,
mess.
like, what are we selling? Who are we selling it to? What do you call this? What do you call different types of animation?
Well, we all know that the first step in this whole process is awareness.
Yeah.
So the first step is awareness.
That's a marketing joke there. So why don't we build some awareness
Nice.
Around the definitions that we need to get to?
So the first definition here that I just want to get around our heads, just animation as a whole. Animation is movement over time. It's literally what it means. But typically the way we describe it, and I wrote it down here, a collaborative visual medium, usually collaborative, doesn't have to be. Almost always, but usually, that utilizes different roles within the creative economy.
Right.
Now, the creative economy as a whole is something else you can look into, but it describes basically all of the people working and doing and living and working on things that are creative. So I can list off a bunch of stuff, but
but it's basically that idea that we want to set aside the word animation being associated with other assumed things like brand names or a particular style or things like cartoons or children's entertainment, and really get a sense of thinking about it as a medium that can be utilized in a lot of different ways. And thinking about that, within there are so many different visual styles of animation. And just like in the fashion industry, this is the easiest analogy I can come up with. But in fashion, a lot of things tend to ebb and flow, right? There's trends that are in or out in that particular month or year. And so animation is kind of similar in that way. You can think about it just, what's hip and with it.
What's in vogue?
Sure.
Is animation ever going to be like in vogue?
Perhaps. But yeah, clearly we're not fashion people. So instead of going
nice
too
hat,
far.
by the way.
Oh, thank
you. If we're going to talk about fashion,
we're very
nice
fashion
hat.
forward in our attire.
I know this is an auditory medium, but if you're on YouTube, you'll see there's a nice hat there.
Yeah, also being in a place that's apparently going to be negative 25 degrees tomorrow.
That's true.
You need a hat. You
need
a hat.
I should have thought about that.
Okay, but we're not talking about tomorrow. Let's get back into the present. Let's start by assigning some roles, right? We've addressed the problem.
Yeah.
Let's pick who's doing what here, who's
so I'll take the marketer role.
Okay.
Listen, that's an easy one.
So then I will assume the role of the creative.
Yeah.
Creative?
Creative.
The creative, yes. Yeah. So, Mr. Marketer, do you have an assigned name of some kind today?
Assigned name for a marketer?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking roles, like, do we have names that we go with?
Maybe like Mr. Comms. Because I'm so calm.
Mr. Comms. Okay.
I don't know.
I'll be Mr. Cray.
Mr. Cray.
Yeah.
Comms and Cray. That's a terrible show.
Yeah, no one would watch that.
No.
But go ahead, Mr. Comms.
All right. So, as a marketer, from my perspective, I'm thinking, what options do we have today to utilize the medium of animation? And a lot of the times, I'm thinking I'm going outside and I'm seeing a bunch of stuff out in the real world, and it's all animated. There's a lot of animation in our lives today from different places, and so the first step that can be confusing. The first step to think about is decide what is my main purpose of the video. What am I going to use the medium for? And that we internally here at OpenPixel, we think about it sort of in three different buckets. So there's the sell bucket, there's the educate bucket, and then there's the entertain bucket, or some combination of those things, right? So when you're trying to sell something, obviously, you can see animation doing that all the time. Entertain someone. Sometimes you can do both of those.
So if I'm a marketer coming to OpenPixel, can I ask for something like a combo number 5?
A combo number. Would you like fries with that? I don't know.
Yeah.
A little side of awareness.
There you go.
Perhaps.
There you go.
Depending on what kind of product or service you're working with, the strategy around the animated video will change. Okay, so here are some ideas if you're working with a couple of different types of products. I'm going to give you some ideas here. So physical products, animation in this category would showcase the products in different ways, for example. Inner details, how the product works, or how your audience uses them. So animated videos kind of, I'm sure you've seen this, but you take a product and you pull it apart and you blow things up and you see all the little intricate details inside. A lot of things like technically built things like microphones. I've seen a microphone sort of kind of pull apart.
Transformers.
Yeah, taking that product, building it. Usually it's a CAD model, right, from the manufacturer or something like that, or modeled by a creative person, a 3D modeler usually. That's one way of utilizing animation. Another way would be a video describing how the physical product works, right? So recently we did a device called, it was a paracord holder. Yes. It was a sort of a 3D model that they provided us, again, through a CAD model. And we're going through the product packaging. So at the time of the product, you get the product and you open it. There's a little QR code. You scan it. It takes you to the video and it shows you how to set it up because there's a little bit of a setup there. So in doing that project, we basically had to sort of animate the steps on how to set it up. So that might be another way to utilize animation as a medium.
For sure.
A lot of other types of products that we work on, medical. So if you're in the medical field, sometimes you'll have a procedure or a process or maybe administering some drug. Sometimes going through that process through a 3D visualization is actually a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to digest depending on what's happening.
Yeah. So just and kind of going back to that idea of like animation on the medical side, we're not talking in terms of the style of like Magic School Bus or something of that nature or
right.
something for kids. It is a little more, what's the word for it?
Appropriate?
I guess.
I would call it appropriate.
If you're selling versus like Magic School Bus is something that's more entertainment and education. Right. It's a combo for sure.
Yeah. If you're working with digital products, animation in this category might include app demo videos. Usually that's how people are referring to them these days. Digital courses, perhaps, that teach some concepts, and other applications. So if you have a digital app that you're working with, sometimes a lot of folks call those products, right? A digital app. You may want to use animation to showcase how the app works. Oftentimes going through the steps or the buttons that you have to hit and those things, especially when you're in development of the product, of said product, and you're still trying to, say, raise money or pitch or use some sort of animation for something else. Sometimes going through that app is useful and it's helpful. Another part is there's sort of an explainer video, so explaining the app and the service structure or the benefit to how the app works. This is where that classic explainer video comes from. You're going through the app or going through the product, talking about the business model, usually framed around a problem, and then at the end you have a call to action. For coursework, say you're trying to teach people or educate your customer on how something is working, or even your employees, trying to educate your audience on a specific topic is another way you can use animation. So for larger companies, we'll do a lot of compliance videos, for example, where we talk about a specific topic or theme and teach employees
new policies that were put in place.
So for nonprofits, a lot of the times what you can do is use animation to teach courses around specific skills. Many use them to increase membership value. We've been working with the ACA recently on a course that would teach people how to paddle safely. The ACA stands for American Canoe Association, not to be confused
with any other acronym that uses ACA.
There's so many. So Affordable Care Act is one big one that comes to mind.
There's a ton, but and I mean, we've worked with clients that have had acronyms within acronyms.
That's true. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That's a really
if at any point during this podcast we say an acronym, we're gonna make sure that we try to define it for what it means within our context.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. I mean, there's so many in the marketing world too.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Too many.
Oh, maybe let us know your favorite acronyms.
What's your favorite marketing acronym?
Yeah.
I like ICP.
Insane Clown Posse? That's legitimately the only thing I know it for, yeah.
Ideal customer profile.
Oh, see, there you go.
Yeah. That's really funny, Insane Clown Posse. If you're a marketer promoting or selling a service, you might want to think about animation in this category as including videos of two types. So one thing is like describing the service or how it works, or a brand video that basically informs your audiences on who the brand is and what they stand for. As a marketer, you should start thinking about using animation for talking about topics that are a little bit less tangible, things that aren't so physical and more conceptual. So something like AI in tech or racism in the workplace, say. Like those are sort of interesting topics that really don't have a tangible physical thing to hold on to, that you can kind of use animation to sort of explain those things.
And you can explain it more abstractly.
Yeah.
Abstractly, or using things like metaphors. So if you're talking about a complex topic like DEI or racism in the workplace, maybe you're using pens and pencils to represent characters or people versus actual characters themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking about pens, to kind of switch a little bit, do you have a favorite pen?
I don't have a favorite pen, but I really just don't want to be a Bic.
Boy, that one hurt. I feel you might have heard that I'm like a little nasally today. I think I just got more sick.
So another way to do animation as a service is thinking about brand videos or brand reveals or who you are and what you stand for videos. That's kind of like the idea. Animation here could be used in many different ways, but we think about them as like brand transitions. So like when one company buys another company or is in transition to become another one,
right.
Typically a video would introduce them into the world as a new company. We've done that a couple times with a couple different companies.
For sure.
And typically we, push those to online channels, and all of a sudden you have a new brand. So quick recap. First, decide what the main purpose of the video is. That's your very first thing that you want to do. The second thing you want to do is figure out what type of video you need to make as a marketer. Right.
But this is where we transition into the problem on the creative side, because when we're talking about saying figure out what your product type is, if we're talking about a creative, from my perspective as the creative in this particular role, I have a problem with naming my products effectively for a marketer to understand what it is that I'm selling.
Right.
And there really is no particular industry standard or consensus around what product types can be named. There's some kind of assumptions that we have, but I think it's important to understand that this is definitely a problem within the creative industry as a whole.
Yeah, for sure.
As a creative this time around, I might look at the intention behind a marketer's video, reminding ourselves here that we're talking about whether or not they're selling, they're educating, or they're entertaining, or a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. And I might immediately jump into style or what the visuals could look like for this particular piece. So as an example, let's say you, Mr. Comms, you're selling a new hip type of water bottle. Oh, beautiful.
Can imagine a water bottle right here.
Yeah.
We might comp one in.
Right. Don't give us more editing work.
Comp one in.
But yeah, so you're selling a water bottle, and me as a creative, maybe I've worked on a project before that has a water bottle in it, and I remember what that style looked like, and I'm like, oh, that might be really cool and like effective for your brand in this particular way. But the problem there is that I'm leading with the visual idea instead of thinking about how a video for that product is going to fit within their marketing strategy. And so what we really need to do first is get clear about what to define this project as, what to define this sort of product type as, like what we're defining the service as, with that marketer directly. To better understand what their strategy is around it. Otherwise, we're just going to make a bunch of different assumptions about going into this project. Like the idea that we assume that we're funny.
That can totally be wrong.
That's true. That's true.
Tell us your best jokes in the comments.
Yeah. If you've got better jokes than the things that we come up with as we transition through things here.
Yeah. You can assume that we'll read them.
That's true. Yes, we would love to hear your jokes. But yeah, so once you actually know what that strategy is from the marketer, that's where you can start to think on the creative side. I can start to think about what types of products, not styles, right? What types of products will benefit your target audience, you, Mr. Comms. Because style ultimately comes later.
Style should always come later.
Yeah, that's true. Just something to always keep in mind as a creative, for sure. Yeah. So there are kind of 4 product types that are the most common that you can kind of think about wrapping your service around as a creative. One thing that's very big is content marketing videos, right? These are campaigns that run on different digital channels, and they encompass a wide range of distribution paths, right? Those are your social media, your digital advertisements, your blogs, your video podcasts of this
Sometimes
nature.
email marketing. I feel like, content marketing from a marketer's lens can encompass so many different things.
Yeah.
And sometimes those channels are unclear if you don't have clear direction on what you're
So
doing
it's helpful as a creative to define these are the spaces that we typically work in.
Yeah.
We distribute on these types of channels because
Right.
that's what we do. Then the most common term, we've already talked about it a little bit, but almost everyone has heard of explainer videos at this point.
explainer videos.
Explainers, yeah.
Yeah.
They're most commonly known across creatives and marketives.
Marketives.
That's a new term.
I think we just came up with a new role.
Oh, exciting. We'll have to
Marketives.
come up with it. We'll figure out the details later. But essentially, right, you're teaching your audience about what the service or product is and how it works. This could also be done as a purely educational thing. So I also want to acknowledge here how deep explainer videos go in the creative world. There are schools that are now teaching how to make explainer videos all the time. So students are coming out of school already understanding the concept of explainer videos as the default form of telling about a product or service.
Yeah, and they're also ingesting a lot of that communication either online through YouTube or through some of their ads or some of the products that they already buy.
Right.
they're
So it's
already
definitely a
ingesting
product
it.
type that's sticking around.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll see how long for, but
Yeah.
it'll definitely
I think
be
they're
there
getting
for
more sophisticated, though. I think
for
that's,
sure.
Yeah.
So the third product type that's fairly common is what's known as a product demo video. This could be either a digital or a physical product. Those are apps or paracord, like we talked about earlier. But they're typically just showcasing how the product works.
Yeah.
More or
You're
less.
demoing the product.
Right.
Whether that's a physical thing, let's go through the Ninja and hit all the buttons and see how it blends, or here's a product that's an app, let's hit all the buttons and see what they do.
And sometimes I remember as creatives, we've worked on projects where the product demo might not be ready yet. So we've done mock-ups of what that product could look like.
Yeah, which then informs the UI animation in the future.
For sure.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 product types. And, I want to acknowledge that this can be applied to working in the nonprofit space as well. All of these product types can be across the board, whether for profit or nonprofit. But
Absolutely.
those are just the 4 most common types that we see. And so...
Yeah, there are some other subcategories in there.
Yeah.
Again,
we can get into in other episodes and kind of dive into them more deeply.
Yeah, I think they'll
but
get
if there's
in there.
one that you've seen that you recognize as a pretty deep common type that you'd like us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah, if you're on the tubes,
The what?
on the tubes, I think that's how. Is that not how?
Are you talking about YouTube?
The tubes of you?
We are not cool.
Let us know in the dialogue section.
The chat?
Dialogues,
The comments?
That's it.
There we go.
That's it. Midway down the page somewhere down there,
Uh-huh.
where people usually have, I think they
Below
have
the fold. Yeah.
super calm discussions, I think, happen there.
Oh, it's
around.
never
And they
negative.
get- yeah,
only
no.
positive
Only
discussions
positive.
happen on the tubes of you.
Tell us how you define your product types. We'd love to know.
Yeah. Because I think once we start that conversation, we're going to get to more consensus through that conversation.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the problems from the marketer's POV, a little bit of the creative's POV. We've gave you some super quick tips. Let's recap some of the solutions here before we move forward. So as a marketer, you want to identify what kind of product are you selling? What kind of thing are you working with? Is it a physical product? Is it a digital product? Is it a service? Is it something else? Think about what you're working with and then decide on what the purpose of your video is going to be. Are you selling it? Are you educating someone? Are you entertaining your audience? Or some combo number 5? Are you getting fries with that?
Combo number 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There you go.
Oh, I haven't heard that song.
We're
in a
really
while.
aging ourselves right now.
Then look for the appropriate product type that will fit your needs. Okay? If you don't know what the best product type will be, write down some of the intended outcomes for your audience. So from watching the animated video, what are they going to get? And then when in doubt, ask. We have plenty of ways to ask us personally, and I'll talk about that at the end of the podcast, but ask the person you're working with, what's the best way to utilize animation in this particular
ask
way.
your in-house creative teams. Ask any creative that you want to get involved with. Always ask.
It's important to know what types are available as a way for your organization to stay relevant over time.
For sure.
And animation has taken over your world, pretty much. So it's time to get in on it.
There we go. So as creatives, just a reminder, we've said it a couple times now, but style should come later. Right? Focus on it on the back end. And I know it's hard for us as creatives to separate out the style from what we're actually watching. So one question you can ask yourself is, while you're watching an animated piece of content, who is this for? And what is the purpose behind it? It might make it easier to distance yourself from the cool style that's happening, right? If you can tell if something's happening just because it's a trend versus like, does this actually fit the brand and the tone of the brand and the messaging of the brand? Right. Or does it feel like it's kind of out of place for what their brand is? Yeah,
I think when I'm watching ads or when I'm getting pummeled, honestly, with content on my phone, I'm not quite thinking about it from that perspective of thinking like, who is that for?
Right.
Who is that for? Remember that the marketers on the other side are trying to target you, but oftentimes you as a data point inside of the algorithm or through the service isn't what they're actually looking for, right? So they might be targeting, CEOs or entrepreneurs or whatever, and you just happen to be in that bucket because your LinkedIn profile says founder of something.
Right.
Like I get a bunch of ads on LinkedIn that I would never buy. And I know they're targeting me because it says co-founder.
You've checked off that box.
I've checked off that box. And so therefore I fall into that group, but I am not that person.
Right.
So that's just the marketer not being as specific and targeted enough. Different ways of approaching that particular thing. But from a creative side, think about, who is this for?
Right.
Who is this for?
Yeah. And if you don't understand what that strategy might be behind who they're targeting and why, same idea. Ask the marketer if you have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Who's it for? Understand. You can create like a list of questions in advance to better understand what their intention is behind every piece that they do, because there's always an intention. There's always a purpose behind it.
Yeah, no one's making a video for no reason.
Right.
Like maybe if you're in the No, not even. I was going to say in the experimental animation is a thing that
there's
people
do. There's always a purpose behind that,
but there's a purpose behind that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's an intention there. They want to invoke a feeling in their audiences. Yeah.
There's always intention, whether or not it's clear. If it's not clear, then that's why you have to ask for sure. And so the last thing I'll say on the creative side is that creatives need to do a better job building definitions out onto their websites, onto their content marketing, wherever you're trying to reach the marketers that you're going for. You need to build definitions about what your product types are, what they mean for you and for your studio or your individual business, so that there's just clarity around what we're providing.
Yeah, and a word on that. Don't just make up shit.
Like random words or definitions.
Yeah,
this is a big problem in the animation industry where even roles. I mean, marketers have probably seen this too, where there's chief fun officer, and it's okay,
you're just making stuff up.
But if they have a clear definition for what that means, then that's probably okay,
that's
right?
True.
But if you're not providing the clarity around what it is, I would agree that I think it's better to not just make something up.
Just for the sake of being different,
right?
You want to make something up because it's actually differentiated in some way,
right? Put purpose behind it,
yeah.
For sure.
But all right, well, I think that's most of the episode. Let's get to the tease.
Thank you.
I say we leave that in.
You think so?
I mean, it's getting funnier by the minute. Let's get to the tease. The tease is in the next episode, we're going to cover how and when to use and when to avoid animated content.
Which sounds a little crazy coming from animators who are saying, don't use animation for certain things.
There are certain times when you do not want to animate it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about those places. A big thank you to EMedia for producing the podcast.
Absolutely.
Our producer is Jackson Foote. Our music was created by Hidden and licensed through premiumbeat.com. And thank you so much for listening. We will see you.
You can't skip the catchphrase. Hold on. We have to. Everybody already definitely remembers this great catchphrase that we've come up with.
Yeah.
So I will begin. Until next time.
Stay honest.
Stay creative.
Stay open.
There you go.